Hi guys, so the video is about Proviron. So we know that Proviron's main medical use is to increase sex drive. That is its use when it's prescribed. I'm not actually aware of anyone personally that has been prescribed it for that. However, the Bayer sharing Proviron box makes it clear that one of its medicinal uses is for increasing libido. However, Proviron will still shut you down. It is still slightly suppressive. So if you are off cycle, if you are PCTing, there isn't scope to use Proviron. You won't see Proviron written into any PCT plan from anyone that really knows what they're doing. So the Power PCT plan, for example, which is if you Google the Power PCT, it's one of my favorite PCTs. It won't have anything like Proviron written into it, because anything that's somewhat suppressive is counterproductive or counterintuitive to the goal, which is to re-establish HPTA function. So we want nothing in that situation that's going to slow that process down. Albeit, even if it's slightly suppressive, it still will have an impact on the rate at which you can fully kickstart your HPTA. And I'm actually probably of a thought that with Proviron in, you won't be able to. Like, so if you're trying to PCT with Proviron in place, I doubt you will get your test back in range. So where do we want to use Proviron? I'm of a mindset that more tests for most people isn't a great idea. Like, I believe that 500 to 750 tests is a great dose for the large majority of us. And after that dose, I feel the negatives outweigh the benefits. I feel most people don't get on particularly well over a gram of test. There are periods where I recently had James Hollingshead running 1250 test. And I was looking at him, I was like, I just don't quite like how you look here. So we pulled it back to a gram. And the look changed considerably. And then obviously I'm seeing him in person again this weekend, and it'll probably be likely that we pull it down to 750 again and implement some other drugs in its place. So if you're trying to use high tests to offset one of the other compounds you have in your cycle to keep your libido high, because often you'll hear people say you need to run like your test, your nandrolone at 2-to-1 ratio, which is a fair statement when it comes to keeping your libido in check. But if you're running 600 milligrams of nandrolone, like 1.2 grams of test on top is usually going to leave you looking and feeling a bit shit, unless you're incredibly lean and you can manage water very well. Obviously, when you're really, really lean, you just don't tend to hold too much water. The other detriment there is when test is high, we have to use higher doses of an aromatase inhibitor. And these are the drugs that will then start to impact on your HDL and your lipid profile, and it's going to have an overall negative impact on your cholesterol levels. We know that if we have build-up of plaque, we have a greater propensity to developing cardiovascular diseases. So high AI doses for a long period of time, literally we're talking 10 years, could then knock on to you having issues in your late 30s. We want to avoid that. So running moderate tests that could be potentially in line with your 19-nor compound that you run alongside your testosterone, so it could be nandrolone or it could be trenbolone, and then using Proviron on top to help with your libido is always a good option. Like, I personally don't really run Proviron that often. Like, I don't need to run my test at 2-to-1. Like, I can run 600 nandrolone and like 900 test, and my libido be really high. So then for me, Proviron on top would pretty much just make me rapey. Like, it would just be no point in it at all. Like, I would just be spending all day just thinking about shit that I shouldn't. So I barely use Proviron. So if you are someone that really struggles with your libido and it drops when you're running at compounds at those kind of ratios, then it's a really good option for you. And just at 25 to 50 milligrams a day, split AM and PM, is going to cover you for any of those issues. Now, towards the end of a comp prep, I used Proviron in 2015 with the Milos prep, basically because we used every drug possible in that prep. Like if it was a drug that existed, I took it. So I can't really pinpoint what Proviron did or didn't do in that prep. I didn't use it I don't believe I used it in my 2016 NAVA Worlds prep. No, I didn't. So the idea again with using that at that stage is that it's a variation in regards to Masteron as to how it would bring about that hardness. Now, Masteron and Proviron are both DHT drugs, but they're slightly different in their mechanisms of action. Obviously, Proviron, although being an oral, does still impact on the androgen receptor, so it doesn't have non-androgen receptor mediated benefits like some of the other drugs, so we're not talking in terms of that. But it is a slight variation in terms of the hardness that it can bring compared to Masteron, in theory. So we could potentially, at the end of a prep, use Masteron and then use Proviron on top. So for an advanced competitor at the end, we could use a fairly moderate test at the end of a prep, maybe 300 to 500 milligrams a week. The same for Trenbolone, the same for Masteron. And then we have a hardeners on top that would be kind of like Winnie and Anavar. And then for the advanced guys, maybe Halo 2. And then in that last 3 weeks, we could use Proviron as well. Now, it's hard to gauge at that moment in time what is doing what, because you're increasingly getting leaner. You already have Winnie and Masteron in, which bring a very hard, dry look. So you would need to gauge if the Proviron brings anything. Now, I think that if you're using those drugs already, if you're using Winnie, Var, Halo, you're not really going to bring about any more additional liver stress. Like, the realism of that situation is that your ALTs and your ASTs at the end of prep are going to be pretty skewed. But it's nothing really that, as long as you don't have any underlying liver issues and as long as you've got your livers back in range before you did that, you're never really going to have any problems getting them back in range after. So this is why blood work is important, because you cannot just consistently have your livers out, push it, and it keep getting higher and higher and higher. Like, you pushing it out a little bit and then getting it back in is no problem. Our liver is pretty robust. It regenerates. It's a very interesting organ compared to the rest of our body. It self-heals. So we don't have to worry there. Now, don't misconstrue that for me being blasé. This is very person dependent, and ensure that your blood work allows you to do this. But what I'm saying is that adding Proviron on top isn't then overkill from a health perspective, in my opinion. Like, I've added it on top and I've got my blood work done afterwards and I've got everything back in range, but that's because I just maybe don't have any predisposed issues to liver problems. So I couldn't comment as to whether you guys do or not. I'm not going to say girls, because girls have no place using Proviron. Proviron is pure DHT. Like, the only time that you see girls using Proviron is usually when guys give it to them to try to make them horny. Like, that's no joke. That's the only time I see it. And it's quite scary, but you'll see this with coaches as well. Coaches will give their clients Proviron to make them horny. Like, I've seen this shit happen. So if you're a girl and your coach is telling you to do that, I would really think twice about it. Not think twice about taking the drug. Don't take the drug. I would think twice about your coach's motives for telling you to take Proviron. Because if they know their shit, they shouldn't be telling you to take that drug. Same deal with Masteron. Girls don't use Masteron. It's just not an appropriate drug for a girl to use. You can achieve that look just through diet. Like, trust me, Corinne just got on stage and we all saw her conditioning on her Instagram pictures. And all she used was Anavar and a little bit of Primo at the end. And the Primo only went in because she was traveling. because she couldn't take Anavar into Russia or to Brazil. So Primo went in just to cover her bases, so she didn't have to take any drugs with her abroad. So obviously that's the last thing you want, is trying to go into Russia, get you stopped at the border and being caught with Anavar on you. So we used Primo in this end phase. And she was crazy fucking hard. So you don't need to use those drugs to achieve that hardness as a female. So do not take them and question your coach's motives. If your partner is giving you them and like you're not getting side effects and you're enjoying the benefits of them, because in some women you will just struggle to have a sex drive. Like this just kind of happens to a lot of women. Not all girls have sex drives. Some girls are just completely flat sexually. And then 25 milligrams a day in that instance, if it's something that's important to you, because as a couple, like you're kind of missing out on that aspect of a relationship, then yeah, you could probably get away with it. Like I'm getting a bit deep now, but like these are the conversations that I have with a lot of people and a lot of clients where they've asked me my opinions on this. So I'm fairly not experienced, but I can share an insight here to kind of the thought process. But it's not something you want to do long term. Like as a female, you will get sides. Like your hair will get thin, your voice will drop. Like it's not something that I would encourage. It's certainly not anything that I have ever advised a client to do or I would do. It's just not something that I would entertain. Like Anavar for me and Primo, like I said in the other videos for muscle building stuff for girls, I can justify because of the end goal. So it depends what your goal is. If your goal is to have an amazing sex life because that's important to you in that moment in time, then fair enough. Then a little Proviron may help. So Proviron will certainly do the job better than Anavar would in that sense, because Proviron's use is solely for increasing libido. So I hope that kind of surmises my thoughts on Proviron, when to use it, how to use it. The only thing I didn't touch on was dosages. At the end of a prep, I will just tell you what I did for 2015. At 4 weeks out, we started at 50 milligrams a day. At 3 weeks out, we did 100 milligrams a day. At 2 weeks out, we did 150 milligrams a day. At 1 week out, we did 200 milligrams a day. Is that overkill? Maybe. It's a lot of Proviron at the end. It's like 8 tabs a day. It's expensive. I don't really think that there's any need to go over 100. I think that you could do that whole phase and just do 25, 50, 75, 100 into the final 4 weeks. I don't really think there's a need to go 50, 100, 150, 200. Obviously, we did that because it was a prep with Milos and we did everything to the extreme. I couldn't say that I looked any better at that point because there was like 50 milligrams of Halo a day in at that point too. So it's hard to really pinpoint what was bringing the hardness. That was certainly the hardest and driest I'd been at the end of a prep, that's for sure. But then it was probably the leanest too. So it's just obviously, the leaner you get, the harder and drier you get. Like in Corin's case, she was fucking shredded and didn't need any of these hardeners and was harder than I've ever been. So at the end of the day, getting really, really hard and dry is about body fat. So if you want to get really, really crazy dry, then do it. But then if you were able to get really, 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 really lean, and then you were to use these hardeners on top, holy fuck, you're going to look nuts. Like then you would look like Andreas Munzer kind of shit going on, which would be ridiculous. But hitting that level of conditioning is few and far between. Not many people have the kind of the guts, so to speak, to get it done, because it's gutsy to get there. Like it's a lot of suffering. I've certainly not been able to get near that level of conditioning yet. It's a goal for me to get there because it's a challenge, but I think not very many people are able to get all the way down there like that. But those are the uses. Those are when not to use it. Those are when to think twice about using it. So I think I've covered everything there, guys. That's everything I can think of if anyone wants to ask me every question possible with Proviron. So I hope it helps. Cheers.